No, he wasn't going to be here at all. He was in a location that wasn't going to have internet, I think. Yeah, well,
Those locations are becoming
I
harder and harder
always
to
ask
find.
people to let me know, and if they don't, it's on them. Oh. Best here. Um, we need, oh, you have my cover sheet. Yeah. Hi, Beth. Okay, we've got 6 o'clock. We have 3 committee members present, so we're waiting for one more. Hoping that'll be Gene Wilson showing up any minute. I did hear from Randy Elder that he wasn't able to participate tonight, but that was the only one who replied, so. There's Andreas. There's Gene and Tim. Hi, Gene. Hi, Tim.
Is everybody ready? All right. I'd like to officially call our meeting to order. It is 6:01 on February 17th, 2022. This is the Town of Loomis Land Use Committee meeting. We are here in the Loomis Train Depot, and also most of our committee members are actually on Zoom. And to participate via Zoom, the link is right on our agenda, which you can get from our website. Excuse me, turn off my phone. So first of all, let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Can we have roll call, please?
Yes, Chairperson Jan Clark-Kretz,
Here.
Bonnie London,
Here.
Tim Underko. I see that he's here.
Tim, you just need to unmute.
Okay.
Okay, Gene Wilson.
Here.
Yeah, now you're good. Beth Cohen.
Here.
And that's all of us today. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Now is the time for committee comment for items not on the agenda. Anybody on our committee have something they'd like to discuss not on the agenda tonight? All right, any public comment for items not on the agenda? We do have one public member here. Happy to see Jesse as always. Okay, so not seeing any. Now we have the adoption of the agenda, and
I move to adopt the agenda.
is there a second? I'll second. We can have roll call, please.
Yes, Bonnie London,
Yes.
Jan Clark Kretz,
Yes.
Tim Underko, Jean Wilson,
yes,
Beth Cohen.
Yes.
Thank you. And I see that Ramona is now in the room.
Great. Welcome, Ramona. All right. Now we're going to move to public comment for items on the consent agenda. Or any comments? And hearing and seeing none.
I was wondering, the one that had what was the amendment? I saw that was,
Yes.
I saw that it was in colored, but what was it changed from?
It was just more specifically the wording of the actual request by the applicant and going to RR. It was just a kind of a better word for word of what was said at the meeting.
Okay, because I didn't recognize it. It seemed that different. So I thought, what was changed? Thank
It was
you.
just a couple words.
Okay, thanks.
What it mainly did, Jean, was to identify the parcel numbers that were involved with that property instead of
okay.
just the street addresses.
Thank you.
Oh, it looks like Tim needs to be added to the panel. Oops. Hi, Tim. Can you unmute now?
Okay, Tim, you're up to panelist level and you just need to unmute when you're ready to speak.
Okay. All right, so back to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to accept the consent agenda?
I move to accept the consent agenda.
And a
Second.
second? Great.
Second.
Thank you, Jean.
Okay, Bonnie London,
Yes.
Jean Wilson,
Yes.
Jan Clark Kretz,
Yes.
Tim Underko, and Beth Cohen.
Yes.
All right, great. Thank you. Now we'll move right over to committee matters. Hand it over to Mary Beth.
Thank you and welcome to our February 17th Land Use Committee meeting. There's Tim, I can hear you.
But he's still muted.
Yeah, you're muted, but okay. What we have for you tonight is a continuation from where we left off 2 weeks ago. Tonight, we're going to begin with our land use change requests, beginning at item number 17. And Christy Consolini from Hauge Brook Associates is here to get that ball rolling, and together we will help answer all your questions for tonight.
And I am going to share my screen. Hang on. Okay, can you see that? Yes. Okay. So we're talking about map site 17. I will scroll down to the picture. So we're looking at this parcel right here. It's not a request by the owner. It's a request by a non-owner to try and help out Golden Eagle Auto Repair Shop. So they're suggesting that 5845 Webb Street be changed from RM, or residential medium density, to town center commercial. The site here, let me come down here. So you'll see there are residences right here, and there's a business over in this area here, and the location of the existing business right here along Taylor Road. This area does have services. There's water and sewer. It's just not the property owner is not the one requesting the change, and the subcommittee recommended no change.
Okay, Christy, thank you. And the owner is not here tonight?
Correct.
Okay. Does anybody on the committee disagree with the subcommittee's recommendation? And any public members disagree? Okay, looks like we will continue that on as no change then.
Okay. So
Do we need specific votes for each of these, or can it just be committee consensus?
In all the other meetings, the only time we have voted is if we've actually went against what the recommended was, or if it was one that had a great deal of discussion. The rest of them, we did a consensus to accept the subcommittee's decision.
Okay,
And I think Andrew said that we're going to do a motion at the end.
Yeah, I would like a motion at the end to recommend the package that you're putting together.
All right.
okay. So moving to the next one, map site 18, and a number of these parcels, these were looked at before, but they have all been withdrawn. So the current owner would like to keep the existing designation. So I think we can skip ahead.
Yes.
And the same for 19, it's same owner, just different groupings of those parcels. So we were looking at this, and now we're looking at this area.
So the first two by that owner were withdrawn, all the stuff in red
Yes.
was withdrawn.
Yes. So they would like to keep all of this area as is. And again, with 20, same thing, same owner. They have chosen to keep it as is.
Christy, could you zoom out a little bit, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Is that okay?
can you make the screen part bigger at all?
No.
Okay.
Maybe.
Okay,
That I can do that.
okay,
Okay.
that works.
And then again, so the remainder of those properties is this area right here. And they would just like to keep those as is. So withdrawing their request. Which gets us to map site 21. So that is the business park site. The subcommittee had recommended to change this from business park to RE, residential estate. This change, the owner has been contacted. They would like that to be rural residential or single family residential. That's the Ralph Trim property. The problem with this property is access. So that is the reason for this suggestion to something that's less busy than a business park. And water service is available in Taylor Road. So there's an extension from Taylor across the railroad track. And then sewer, there's a sewer main that is running along the boundary between this site and the adjacent parcels. So land uses surrounding it are residential estate to the west, rural residential to the north, and general commercial to the south and east. And of course, the railroad track. Any discussion? So again, the subcommittee voted to change that from business park to residential estate. And I can throw up the map too, if you'd like to see that.
And all the commercial is essentially across the railroad track, so it's not impinging directly on that property anyway, right?
Right. So yeah, you have the railroad track sort of acting as a boundary between it and Taylor Road. So I can share.
The owner is not online or anything tonight, right?
No.
Okay.
Sean and I did meet with him and had a discussion, and back in 2000, when the last general plan update was done, there was, of course, they talked to him about changing it to BP. Well, they went ahead and did that, and now 20 years later, you realize that it's very landlocked, and any kind of business park development in that area would be just difficult for site access and things like that. So at this point in time, Mr. Trim just asked to go back to being a residential estates, 2.3 acre minimums on 30 acres. And basically do family homes out there for him and his children, grandchildren, whatever.
Clarify, he wants RE, he does not want RR or RS? I'm confused on that point.
Correct. The subcommittee's recommendation was RE versus RR.
But what does the owner want?
He was good with either way. Higher density, not really necessary for what he wants to do going forward. But the committee kind of, as you can see in the bottom of map site 21, in the assessment, the different number of units that can be applied to that under RE is 13 units. But with SB9 lot splits, it could go to 52. The RR, the higher to 30 units at this time, would allow them 120 units there. So, you know, we kind of floated the math down so that you could see how that would be applicable to this site. And based on that, the subcommittee's recommendation was to go with the RE 13 units with the potential for 59 under SB9.
So just for a refresher, the SB 9 means that all residential lots can be split and can have two homes on it. Is that incorrect, or how, what's the thumbnail of that?
That's
Yeah,
a fair
that-
summary of it.
Yeah, the only thing I would caution you on is the use of the word all. There are several restrictions that go with that, but for our purposes, Gene, that's a good summary.
And actually, I believe under the town's code, you could have a single family unit, an accessory unit, a ADU and a junior ADU. So a potential total of 3 units per site.
And what about the access? I remember that it would have to be the one that comes in from Bankhead,
Bankhead, yeah.
some small lane. I would be concerned about, one is how big an access can they have and how much traffic can it hold, as well as how much traffic are we potentially putting out into that area.
You're actually reducing traffic significantly if you change this to RE. And as I understand it, he owns property that goes out to Sierra College Boulevard, so there's more than one option for access.
Right.
Yeah,
there's
I
this
believe
property
he
here.
owns that, right, he owns that parcel right there that's being circled. So, and I think he mentioned in a staff meeting that that's where the access would be.
Okay.
Whereas trying to put a business park and that kind of access through the adjacent parcel and onto Bankhead would be just problematic.
All right, committee, anybody disagree with the subcommittee's suggestion, recommendation? Changing it to RE? Any public members have any comments? Ramona, go ahead.
I actually have a question. What's the acreage of that site?
Isn't it 30 acres?
30 acres as far as I recall.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Yeah, so the other question I have is the very triangular nature of the site itself. And I do see the math that was done as to, you know, the potential of it being built out to, you know, if it's RR 30 units, but up to 120 units, with that size of a parcel, you know, I don't have a problem with it at all if it's RE, if that's especially what the landowner wants. I think that's perfectly fine. But I'm just kind of curious as to, you know, are these super realistic numbers, or is this just the straight math of 30 units to 120 units, given the size and shape of the parcel, would you really get 120 units if it was zoned RR, or if it was, the designation was RR?
No, I mean, these are just based on the acreages. It's not taking into account anything such as if there's a wetland feature or any, environmental aspect of that, or, how you would lay that out with, roads and other infrastructure in the site. So this would be pretty much a maximum scenario.
All right, thank you.
Other comments? All right. So if there's no other comments or any issues with the subcommittee's recommendation, it looks like we'll be keeping this one as is, as it was recommended.
So changing from BP to RE.
Yes.
All right. So map site 22. This is a long parcel. It's actually two parcels. So there's one coming off of Saunders here and connecting slightly to Sierra College Boulevard, and then the adjoining parcel that is on Sierra College Boulevard. And this one is a request from the landowner requesting to change from RA to RE. So we're altogether, this is about 11.6 acres. So they're looking to just be able to have a smaller parcel so that they can, some of them can be sold. So there are main lines in Saunders and Sierra College Boulevard. There's no line in Sierra College where this parcel fronts the road. And then there's sewer nearby at Grazing Lane that could be extended through Saunders. It's all RE to the east and RA to the north, south, and west.
And then from my memory, I believe the couple came to one of our meetings. Is that right, Mary Beth? And there was,
I don't think Mr. Ficker has attended a meeting.
oh, okay. I thought this was the same people that when Sierra College came in, split this, and then there's a little bit of a corner on the other side.
Yeah,
So-
and they live over on Delmar.
Yeah. So if
with
you
the
go back
parcel
to the
across
map,
way.
Yeah.
on the across the street, I think they do. There's a tiny little bit of this that
Yeah.
got cut off from the road. But
Right.
I'm just giving you guys some historical background on because they own that little bit of sliver there that got cut up by the road.
The little triangle, you mean, or something else?
So that triangle was just square, and then
Right.
the road came and split it
I-
up. So they
oh.
still own. I think they still own both sides.
Yeah, they have both sides of the highway. And actually where it is, Christy, if you could use your cursor and left
Over
a little
here?
more, and up, almost, that parcel crosses both sides of Sierra College. So they have a remnant on the other side that they can't do anything with, but that's not part of what we're looking at for this particular parcels.
So
Different-
the remnant on the other side, is that part of technically this parcel, the triangle parcel?
No,
No, no. Just it was just a really interesting piece of information that we found out when they came to the meeting and we're talking about the history and the challenges that they face with their land.
So do they own that part on the other side, that fragment, or not?
I think, don't they still?
no, not part of the red triangle or the red rectangle.
It's, yeah, I don't want to confuse everybody that the request is only what's asked, it's in red. It's just, I believe that Jean was asking if they still own the other side of the street, which I think they do, just a tiny little piece of land.
Yeah.
Yeah.
but not enough if it's included with the triangle to give them the amount that they would need to do the 4.6 acreages, right?
How much is that small triangle? Do we know?
0.6.
Oh, it's just a little bit then.
Mhm.
Now, given that one of the earlier ones that was withdrawn is where the creek goes through and there's all the trees there, all the canopy,
Mhm.
that was withdrawn. So that is going to remain RA, correct?
Correct.
And then up on the right-hand side of them, at the top along, what is that, Saunders?
Mhm.
There are actually two parcels. Yeah, right in there. Those are also RA, are they not?
They are. Yeah, above them is RA, and then everything, if you were to look at this line right here, everything to the east then is the RE. But direction,
Are you sure that the ones at the top are not, the two little ones at the top, are you sure those are not?
so you can see it right here on this map. This is the site we're looking at. So the parcels that are above it are in the RA. Here, let me see if I can zoom. Is that,
Okay.
so we're looking at this. So parcels north and to the west are all RA, and then as you go east, then you have the RE.
I think I missed something, but are you saying the triangle is not part of the request or it is part of the
It
request?
is.
And then the other side of Sierra College is still part of the same parcel. So how could we change one half of the parcel to RE and the other half remained as RA?
It was one parcel when Sierra College Boulevard came through, that split the parcel. So what we're just looking at right now are these two parcels right here.
It's not an easement. It's actually two separate parcels.
Correct.
Yes. So there's this rectangle, and then you have this small triangle that's sort of the remnant from the roadway.
And Beth, the confusion is we had a kind of more of a sidebar discussion about the house on Delmar that is one parcel that crosses Sierra College, not part of this that we're talking about now, but part of a discussion of another property that is considered one legal parcel, but Sierra College goes right through the middle of it.
Yeah, that does happen around town. That's why I asked if the across the road was still part of that triangle, but I guess it's not.
Yeah, in this particular case, the triangle is independent and doesn't have anything on the other side of Sierra College.
Go ahead, Ramona.
Yeah, again, I have a question on the larger parcel of the triangle. I think you said was like 0.6 acres or something, but what's the larger portion? What's the acreage on that?
11.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
The subcommittee's recommendation?
I believe it was no change.
No change.
So if this were changed, they're requesting RE.
Right. So it would be an extension of what's adjacent to them to the east, just moving that farther west.
And how many potential is this going to be? With the SB 9 thing?
There is an existing home. Mary Beth, is there also a ADU on that site or no?
No, but he was looking at doing an ADU and then potentially doing a SB9 split, which would then get him merge both of the parcels, the rectangle and the triangle, do an SB9 split, and then he could essentially get the primary dwelling, an ADU and a junior ADU on both parcels. But if he goes to the 2.3 acres, out of 11 acres, you'd end up with, 5 parcels of 2.3 acres? No, my math isn't right. 4.
Yeah, 4.
Yeah, and even in the assessment, it says this land could be split into 5 parcels, but more likely 3, given the need for access road, Antelope Creek setbacks, and that kind of thing. So instead of creating 2 parcels under SB9, what he's looking for is 3 parcels out of the whole.
But then if he gets the 3 parcels, he can do SB9 on each one of those. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So then it's potentially 6 parcels
Correct.
with how many on each? 3?
11 divided by 6.
Yeah, 3 on each potential.
So a single property owner couldn't do an SB9 lot split on 3 separate parcels because of the owner occupancy requirement.
Right.
I think we're getting a little too far down the rabbit hole of hypotheticals with this one on what this particular property owner maybe could do and what other people who might purchase parcels from him could do. We're a little too bogged down in what the property owner might be envisioning.
Remind us about the property owner part of things, Mark, because I'd forgotten about that.
It was actually Andreas. You honored me by considering me similar, but you have to live in one of the units for a period of, I think it's 3 years, Andreas.
Yes.
Yeah.
Made my day, Gene. Thanks.
So if he were to build 3 homes, each with an ADU, then well, one's already there. But how does this? He can build an ADU, but what does the property owner part have to do with it then? The 3 years.
They're separate. The SB9 allows them to split property, but you have to live in one of the units. That's what SB9 deals with. ADU is already allowed by law. Every owner in town could add an ADU to their lot. So they're 2 separate issues, Gene.
So the owner has to live in the house for 3 years before he can split it? Is that what's going on?
Before he can move out, before he can sell it. He can split it, but he just has to live in one of them for 3 years. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know who or how that would ever be checked or thought about. So I think it's a silly part of the law, but I didn't write it.
You have to declare it. You have to declare it on your taxes as a primary residence. That's one barrier. But
that makes sense, Tim. I hadn't thought about that. But I think it's really the honor system for the splitting.
Yeah.
Well, then the application itself has an attestation that they're signing that they are going to be on that property in that main dwelling, one of the 2, for 3 years. So that's all we get.
And I apologize, I'm having a hard time remembering. Can someone remind me why the committee recommended no change?
I think it was because of the SB9.
Well, and overall, the whole area where people were looking at going from RE to RR to the west, the committees really wanted them to stay as what they were. They didn't accept any of those kind of changes, I think, with SB9 in mind, but there are so many caveats to SB9 that each parcel has to be looked at independently, as far as water, sewer, access, flag lots, all of those things. If they're on a well, then they'd have to drill a separate well for the ADU and the new units and all of that. So I think for the most part, the committee just wanted to leave things the way they were.
And I think overall, the committee's basically said they don't want to change to the town of Loomis and therefore leave it the same.
I think a lot of it was to keep the rural areas as rural as we can. And so it was not wanting to make more density along, for instance, Sierra College Boulevard, as well as things on the south side. And if you look at, you see the one that was just withdrawn next to it, he's going to still stay, at this point, was asking for RA. Now, if he gets RE right next to him, between this one and Sierra College Boulevard, the one that was, I don't know, 1918 or 1920, was one of those three, then he may want to come back and say, hey, next to me is, if you look right to the left of 22, that was one of the earlier pieces. Then he may want to come back and say, well, I want RE2 because you gave it to the guy next to me. So he's in there, but I'm stuck here with my little sliver. And I think the purpose was to keep the rural look of Sierra College Boulevard as an entry corridor for Loomis, keep it rural, and not just let the more development kind of creep out and change that aspect of things.
All right. Anybody have any other questions on
I'd
this?
like to hear what other people think on that.
Okay.
Yeah. This is Tim. I don't have a problem with the owner's request. I think it's, excuse me. I still think that it's low density. It's still, excuse me, even at its highest allowable density, as per his request, it would still be low density. And I would say that I'm fine with that. It's not medium density, wouldn't even be high density is what he's not proposing. So I don't think it would change the character of that area all that much. So I'm gonna, after discussion, after listening at others' comments, I think I'm gonna make a motion to support the applicant's request. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you. Ramona?
I understand Jean's comments, and I do kind of follow along with them. Basically, it's kind of the idea of, if you know, the other requests have already been gone through, and in general, they haven't, been accepted, to change it from its existing land use designation. I just kind of follow the same logic of Jean, is once you start, once you open that crack in the dam, where do you stop? Its land use designation is what it is. It's been that way, as far as I can tell, for quite some time. And I don't see any real clear necessity from a landowner's point of view, outside of that, yes, they could divide it into extra parcels and eventually sell them, or sell the whole kit and caboodle to someone with a different designation, and then have obviously more potential to add more units. But again, along Sierra College Boulevard, I believe the concept is to keep that rural and agricultural as much as possible, because really that is the primary kind of image that Loomis wants to support. And if you start dividing up all your residential agricultural land into things that can't really support agriculture anymore, then what's the point of trying to keep that image of Loomis being having an agricultural past if you just, keep allowing parcels to change into a higher density that really negates the ability for agriculture. That's an 11-acre parcel. You could actually either do ag on both, the whole thing, or even at 4.6, you can have a smaller ag operation. But at 2.3, that's pretty much gone. It just becomes an estate lot area with, larger estates with some horses perhaps, but no agriculture potential, no economic potential for agriculture on those parcels. It just disappears. So that's my argument for not doing it, is the agricultural potential disappears if you put it into RE rather than RA. And I would prefer to support the residential, the agricultural component as much as possible in the land that is still RA in Loomis.
Thank you, Ramona. How about you, Beth?
Actually, I think we have a motion, so somebody should ask if there's a second.
Anders, I believe Tim said he wanted to wait till after the discussion to make the motion.
I didn't hear that. Sorry, Tim.
That's okay. Beth, do you have?
I was just gonna say that I agree with Ramona in that I believe the residential agricultural properties that we have in Loomis are the defining factors of the town, and I would hate to constantly peel away at that. I don't see a huge benefit of changing other than, giving the homeowner, the property owner, a little bit more money in his coffers. Changing it to RE, he can right now split it into two properties, into two parcels, and what he's requesting is to change it into 3. So I am in favor of keeping it as residential acreage, agricultural property.
Thank you. All right. Anybody else have any discussion on, how about you, Bonnie?
No, I was just trying to remember when we were, approving this beforehand or discussing it beforehand. I do believe that there was a much larger public turnout from residents in the area. And I think that was, I know for me, one of the reasons of keeping it. I'll be honest, it's a little tough for me, just because, again, it is adjacent to the RE. As much as, and and again, I think we do have to respect some property owner rights. And if the property owner is not using it for agriculture, I think that, that needs to be in consideration, although the property owner is not here to be able to discuss this. And I don't know if, Mary Beth, have you spoken with the property owner recently after?
Not since the original request.
So I do hear, the points that Beth and Ramona and Jean have made, and I think that they're definitely good points. I think that the only, in my mind, as I'm looking at Sierra College Boulevard, Loomis is just a sliver of it. If you go to the, would it be the south portion that is in Rockland? I mean, at the corner of what's going in on Sierra College and Rockland Road, it's kind of insane. So, I do think that the residents that turned out that night, though, were very clear, and especially there were residents that have been here for generations. And so it's a balance to respect that. And I don't think that, again, they aren't leapfrogging some of the land use designations the way that some of the requests have been made. It isn't isolated the way that some of them were. So that's where I can see, it's not an easy one. It's not obvious to me.
Ramona, did you have your hand back up?
I did, but that's okay. I'm fine.
Okay. Yeah, I remember this meeting when we talked about it. And I remember sort of talking about how if it were changed, then it would just bump out the RE a little bit more, which would then make the parcel to the next to him, be a potential, well, why not me? And so I can understand Jean's point. Yeah, I think I'm more on the side of no change myself. But let's open it up for public comment. Is there any public comment? Our one public, no, that's yours. There's no comment.
We have two.
So, so then back to you, Tim. Did you want to?
I'll just throw a motion out there.
Did you want
I would,
Oh, sorry, Tim. We do have a public comment. Sorry.
no problem.
My only thought is it should stay the same way it is now. If the owner wants to make changes, I think it should go to the planning commission and then through the town council. I don't see any need for a change right now. And if they want to move forward with their plans of divvying the parcels up, they should bring it forward to the planning commission. And from there it can be examined as a good move, bad move, and we'd also see his plans for everything. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Tim, go for it.
Ostensibly, this would go through the planning commission and the council. So what we're trying to avoid in the general plan updates is these a la carte requests for general plan amendments outside the general plan. So, or outside the general plan update. So, so anyhow, what I would, my motion would be to support the property owner's request. Again, he's not using it for agricultural purposes currently. To preserve it for something he's not even using, it seems like, I'm not sure what the purpose of that would be. I do understand people not wanting more housing and wanting to preserve all the space that we have. I get that. I just don't think that what he's proposing is going to bring in, big changes in the area. It's very limited in scope. And yep. So I'll make a motion to support the landowner's request.
Okay. Is there a second? I'm not hearing any seconds. So
Okay.
if there's no seconds,
Motion dies.
yep, motion dies, and looks like our committee would be recommending what the subcommittee recommended.
Okay.
Do you want a motion, given that there was dissent on that, or it's pretty obvious the majority were in favor of no change?
The motion died, so
Okay.
I think we're fine.
It'll get rolled into the motion at the end for all of these changes to be moved forward to the planning commission, or all the recommendations as noted to be moved forward.
Okay.
All right. So moving on to number 23, which was also withdrawn. This is next to a senior care villa, but they have chosen not to go forward with it. So we will just skip along. So
Do we have any idea why they decided not to do it, or what kind of idea that really was? Or it doesn't really matter at this point, I guess.
it doesn't matter if they don't want to pursue. So going to map site 24, this is down at the other end of town. So we had talked about this one, I think, before. This is at 5645 Rockland Road, where Sierra Christian Church is located. This is 5 acres. And the change is requested by the owner to allow for affordable housing on the church site. So potentially requesting medium density, medium high density, or high density, or a general commercial. So this was made at the November 4th Land Use Committee, but it was never reviewed by the subcommittees. So they don't have a recommendation for you.
It was the Sierra Christian Church pastor and husband that attended that meeting. And then after the discussion with the Land Use Committee, they arrived at our next Planning Commission meeting and had a discussion with the Planning Commission about the ability to provide, whether it be affordable housing, senior housing on their church sites. One thing that staff discussed at the Planning Commission meeting also was, you know, we have a lot of church sites in town. And if, you know, the committee would recommend, we could open this for any church sites that are in residential zones to have a higher density component in order to provide affordable housing in Loomis. So even though this is strictly for the church site at 5645 Rockland Road, I would like to have the committee have a discussion about allowing other church sites this same ability at this time.
I think my only concern about that, though, is that you really need to evaluate the sites themselves, if they can handle an increase in density and how the roads are and what the neighborhoods are like. So I'm not sure I'm comfortable with the blanket designation change. I think I'd rather look at them individually.
A question for Mark and for Andreas. What about the town passing an ordinance that would allow churches to consider this under a use permit of some sort, and then you would have your individual review of each site?
We'd still need to account for the density somehow in the land use designation.
Okay.
This really seems to me like creating, well, or maybe a different zone where we get more specific. I don't know. We'd have to think about how best to implement that, and I'm not sure we've really prepared that for right now.
This is an RE parcel, and they were looking at 25 to 85 units of senior affordable housing. It's quite a difference for a 5-acre site.
It seems like this might be a place to land our high density site for HCD purposes, if that's what the property owner is looking to do.
It is right across the street from where we were just talking about the charter school being located, which is troublesome to me.
So here is that site that we're talking about. And then this area right here would be the charter school with housing.
This is not, to Beth, this is not across from the Presbyterian church, which is on the corner. This is up directly across from the entrance to St. Francis Woods. And if you go by St. Francis Woods, you see the entry gate, which is right across from the driveway for Sierra Christian. And then St. Francis Woods has a fairly big sort of naturalistic setback with a rock wall or brick wall, block wall. So you don't really see the housing in St. Francis. I know the church property pretty well because we used to be members there before we got our call to serve as pastors in Nevada City. And so I was the chairman of the board the year we put the sewer in. So I know they have sewer and they have had water and they're on ditch water as well. One of my concerns here is this site happens to be pretty sloped. So all the buildings are up on the higher flat part. There's the sanctuary, which is, it's a barn that was a horse barn that was built by Sierra College construction crew one year for their class, and the church turned it into a barn. And then there's also a Head Start up in the upper right corner. and there's an education building, that kind of tan one there. And then at the back is a large community garden, which I think originally was for community members as well, but I think it's mostly now goes to, they raise things for Placer Food Bank and turn that in. So I'm thinking about how this, I'm for the concept in general. I really am. My concern is, how is this going to fit into the area? To what extent are we still trying to preserve the rural look? Now we're going to get, if we get a school on the corner, that's probably not going to be too rural looking. Sierra, the Presbyterian Church across Shepherd of the Sierra, across the street from the school, is going to retain that rural look. And my guess is they have two pieces of property, but they probably can't split it because their detention pond is on the lower part that catches all the drainage from the buildings and the big parking lot and things like that. So I guess I'm thinking partly about how many units would this end up? And 25 is a whole lot different from 85. And when you put it on a hill, I don't know. I don't have a good visual idea of how that comes out and how does it fit with the area. It's not that far from Rockland, but then we're not trying to look like Rockland either.
So Jean, I had a chance to listen to the Zoom call that they had with, is it Christian Homes? I forget the nonprofit organization.
Right.
And it was a really interesting conversation because it sounds, and they went through so many of their different projects, and it sounds as if they really work closely with the town to make sure that they're meeting the standards and expectations. And they did touch upon a couple of projects where they also wanted to keep it a smaller, kind of rural looking. And so they had more of like those single level courtyard style apartments. And I think that really it'll boil down to our design standards and expectations that we set forth. Now, a big question I have is that, if we approve, is there a way to approve it that it has to be stipulated that it's for affordable housing, because I don't want to land in a situation of where we change the zoning. And I know the church won't do this, but again, what happens if the church never goes through with it and a new owner takes over? I don't want them to be able to put high density that's not affordable if that's the reason we're changing the zoning. Is there a way that we can do that?
You stumped
I think the way to do that is to leave it as it is and have the church bring forward a project when they're ready to do something.
And I think, based on the discussion that Bonnie was just talking about with the affordable home builders and working through that network, so it would just be a way to add, keep the land use designation RA, but then add to the zoning code that the affordable housing, senior housing, however you want to hone in on that, would be an appropriate, an allowable use with a use permit or some, to follow that through the process, rather than adjust the land use designation.
Now, the organization that they are planning to work with is the denominational organization. That doesn't mean that they only can rent to those people, but they only do affordable senior housing. So it would be the kind of housing that, we would be happy to have, I think, as far as that's concerned. That organization would need to own the land. So it would probably mean a lot split then. So the church, if presuming the church wants to stay, that the church would keep half the land and sell, or give the developer, the affordable housing group, the other part for their project. And one of the things that came up in the subcommittee for this whole area was, which we probably should look at this anyway, is that this area is RE on that side of Rockland Road. It's RE, and there is in the general plan, in one of those specific specific area designations, it talks about it's RE except all the ones facing Rockland Road are supposed to be 4.6 acres. And I think it was pointed out to us in the subcommittee, hey, you can't really do that. So I think one of the subcommittee recommendations was that we take that out, which would allow all those to be RE, so that, so that facing Barton Road no longer would have to be a 4.6. And that would allow the church or anybody else along there, but there aren't that many parcels along there, would allow them to split that. I think there are only 2 parcels to the left of the church that would be affected anyway. And it looks like maybe they're already split looking at this map here. So it might not affect anybody but the church, and then Poppy Ridge is next to it, but there's a big water tank. So I don't think that first parcel in Poppy Ridge is not likely to get split. And then is the Presbyterian Church. And I have no idea what their ideas might be for anything in the future.
You know, one of the things we have to remember, we're looking at what is the best land use for these properties. Now, what I'm hearing is there is a discussion, it seems like, an interest in allowing churches to build some affordable housing, but is that the best land use to have that anywhere? So my recommendation is, if this committee thinks that that is something that should be pursued, you direct staff to look into that and come back to the Planning Commission and the Town Council for options of achieving that. But I think at this point in time, looking at this parcel and thinking that you need to change that density significantly from what it is may not be the best solution. And but if there is an interest in looking at church properties and allowing them to provide housing in some form, let the staff look into it and see how that can be done.
This is Tim. I tend to agree with Bonnie's initial comment, and that is I really wouldn't want to support a blanketed type of approach to this and let all the churches have the same approach. So, you know, Anders, I do tend to agree with you. I think that the best thing for that property and the type of use that they're proposing is best brought forward as a project, right? We're not talking about adding 5 properties or 10 properties. I mean, at the highest level, they're wanting 80 plus. And so that's a little bit different. I'd like a further review, a more deep dive review on this at the Planning Commission level. So having said that, there's a couple other observations I have of that area. I tend to reserve throwing around rural so easily, as I've heard being thrown around. In fact, there's nothing about that area that resembles rural to me. I mean, you have across the street near Sierra College Boulevard, all of that's high density, and that's less than 500 feet away. Francis Woods across the street, you know, there's nothing rural about that either. Those are all estate lots, 2.5 acres or less. I think there's
1 acre, Tim, 1 acre.
1 acre. And into the Sierra College and Rockland Road, was it Centex is proposing bringing in 700 medium density units. I just think that rural in that area is a thing of long past. So having said all of that, I do think that this potentially could achieve a couple of our goals as a community. First of all, we're in desperate need of senior housing in this area. And it's a huge missing link in the housing ladder. There's a lot of people who want to step down from their large parcels and still stay in the community. And right now we lose those people to Sun City and other areas. And I think that Loomis needs to do a better job at providing options for seniors to stay in the community. There's a lot of people who helped create this community who don't really have a place to go if they want to step down. So I'm not necessarily opposed to adding some affordable housing, and of course we need to figure out this affordable housing. Identify affordable housing areas. That's going to be a constant struggle for Loomis for years to come. And so, maybe this is part of the puzzle moving forward. But that's a long way of saying I think that we should just leave it as is in the general plan update. And if they want to bring a project together, then let them do that. That's it for me, Madam Chair.
Thanks, Tim. Ramona?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of comment on that same. Yeah, I think the same. It would not be, it would be premature and unwarranted to change the land use designation. I understand the objectives, and the affordable housing is definitely something that would be an objective to consider and look at. And I agree with Anders that needs to be looked at in a much more kind of systematic way, that staff can really look into it and make some recommendations. I don't want to commit to something with a land use designation at this point in time. It hasn't been really looked at, and it would certainly be a land use designation that would not be consistent with the other decisions we've been making. It would be a kind of a spot change, and the school site kind of was the same conclusion, that if there's a project that needs to be, that's much more certain, it needs to be brought forward and then considered. And for those types of uses, rather than just, market rate homes being developed, it's, they can kind of be viewed in a slightly, in a different category because it is trying to meet needs of the community that are otherwise unmet. But at this time, yeah, I don't think I would recommend any changes, and it could be dealt with a little differently, however staff kind of wants to kind of tackle that objective of looking at churches in general with that potential, and then how we could better deal with it across the board.
Thanks, Ramona. Bonnie?
I do want to thank staff for working with the churches closely on this, because I think that from what I heard at the town council meeting, all of the council members seem to express support for this concept of having the affordable housing and church sites, being in partnership. So thank you.
And the senior component was really appealing, rather than just affordable housing. When they kept talking senior, it was.
We have public comment.
I am a huge fan of a senior affordable housing. And again, I say senior affordable housing. Why? Because we don't drive during your commute hours. Being across from a school would be absolutely perfect. We're not going to be on the road until after 9 o'clock in the morning, and we're going to be home earlier. And we have more disposable income because of affordable senior housing. Only 30% of your income is going toward the housing. The rest is your disposable income. So again, whenever we talk about senior affordable housing, I want it to be a positive response. If the churches can help us, that's great. But again, I agree with staff. It shouldn't just be a blanket open and then we'll see what happens, okay? As far as the seniors, not only does it help with traffic, we're less on police services. So again, we add to the community with disposable income, but we don't hurt your traffic roads and your police services. So again, that's about it. Thank you much.
Thank you. And Beth, did you have any comments?
I am 100% in favor of senior and affordable housing, and as well as senior affordable housing as a combined term. 100% in favor of it. And I don't necessarily think it needs to be tied to any kind of religious organization. Probably being the only Jew on this panel, I find it a little bit disturbing that it's constantly described as, on churches' properties. So, if we're going to investigate adding the option of having senior and affordable housing throughout the town, which I am in favor of, I don't think it has to be tied to a religious organization.
Hi, Beth. This is Bonnie. My husband's also Jewish, so I do understand where you're coming from. One thing that the organization that the church is working with, they made it very clear that it's non-denominational, that the residents are not affiliated with any religious preference. And so maybe we should be using faith-based. I do know that there are synagogues that are doing the same thing. And in fact, I think that with this organization, they may have partnered with a synagogue in another jurisdiction, but just to throw that out there.
There may be other types of nonprofits that are, that are interested in this too, if we made it available. I don't mean this specific site. I think they have somebody that they want to work with, but in general for the town, I think it's premature to I think that most of us think it's premature to change a designation on this one. And, looking at the options, I wouldn't have any idea which density to pick for this one. I like the idea of sending it back to the town to look at, and it probably is not going to be a one size fits all for what could go on at churches. Maybe some can have some higher density, and maybe some it's not going to be that, but some other type of housing, tiny homes or something else. I mean, I think the overall picture of what some of the church campuses might be able to do is probably bigger than the scope of what this one might be able to do. So I'm favorable toward the concept, but I don't think we're ready to act on this. I think it does need to be on a project level. My question is, do we need to take away the requirement in the current general plan that says that all the parcels facing Rockland Road need to be 4.6 acres so that it could be split without having to do something else in the general plan amendment for that? Can we follow that recommendation of the subcommittee?
I believe you already have, Gene, because we've gone through all the goals and policies that was removed. So I think this committee's already made that decision.
Oh, okay. It didn't come to this committee, but you're saying that previous committee made it for us, correct?
No, it did come. You as a committee have gone through the entire land use element, all the goals, policies, objectives, which were recommended. So you have done that, and that
it wasn't in those specific things, though. I don't think
it was removed. It's not there any longer.
Okay, it's not there under the specific areas parts. That's where it was. It wasn't in goals, policies, and objectives, but maybe we took that out of the other part too. I just didn't want it left hanging.
All right.
Maybe we could make a note, though, if that we can double check that, please, because I'm having a hard time remembering myself. And it wasn't in the actual policies; it was in a specific land area, which is why I think.
Yes, it was a sentence or two in there, and staff's recommendation is if you want to keep it, then we change the land use designation to show it. Don't hide it in the text, put it on the map. And then the committee decided just to take it out.
Okay.
So I've made a note, we can, when we do that last review of the element, we can double check to make sure it's gone.
Okay. So it seems like our committee is sort of unanimous in this particular case, and we will wait for a project to come forward, but also we, I think, would like to encourage staff to look into potentially looking into getting faith-based senior housing and affordable housing, which then this will roll up to the Planning Commission anyway.
Can it be nonprofits, more general? Or you
Yes.
want it to be faith-based?
Yes.
From an HCD perspective, it would probably be better if it was nonprofits.
Okay.
I know one other church in town that has some possibility and may be interested. I'm not speaking for them directly, but the Congregational Church up on King Road is looking into it at least.
All right.
They're
Is
the
everybody-
ones that are next to Hidden Grove, where it comes out up there.
Okay. Is everybody okay with that, with our committee recommendation as written? Okay.
All right. So now we are revisiting where we left off a few weeks ago. So this is the site, the Gervasoni site, where the Alice's fruit stand is located, and we talked about what to do with that. Do we change it from general commercial to something else, residential perhaps? And what do we do with that PG E easement on there? So Mary Beth's done quite a bit of work. And we will, in your packet, if you had a chance to look through it, you would have seen these tables that are comparing what's allowed under commercial versus, say, RS10. And then there's also information beyond this showing the site. So you can see where the PG E easement is located. So it's off to the side, and the house and this fruit stand are over in this area. And then there's a pond back here. And then this is just their agreement, and then just some information about PG&E facilities. So Mary Beth, you did talk to them a little more, and they are looking at a request for RS10. Is that's correct?
That's correct. I put the table together to show the differences in allowable uses between the general commercial and the RS10. I provided that to Brett and Mike Gervasoni so that they could look and, really understand what they could do on their property versus, the existing and the potential. And after they looked at that, we had another conversation, and they really, really like the RS10 versus the general commercial. And Brett Gervasoni is here on the call, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but in general, it related to the surrounding neighborhood to the north and keeping it more of a lower density residential. In the general commercial, you could actually do twice as many units, and they don't want to do that to their residential neighbors around them, and feel that the RS10 would provide them additional housing at that location, not only at the north of town where there's not a whole lot of commercial activity, but they felt it would be better suited as residential. And Brett, feel free to chime in.
No,
Hi, everybody. This is Brett Gervasoni. Sorry I missed the last meeting, but I was in another meeting and my brother was on the line. But Mary Beth pretty much summarized what our couple conversations were. We're just looking for something that is a good partnership that offers opportunities for the town of Loomis and ourselves. This is not a unilateral decision or thing that we're trying to request that wouldn't benefit the city at all or town, but we also think that it gives a greater opportunity for what kind of development's actually going to go into this area and our property based on historical, what people have tried to buy and build in the past, and just what's going on in the area with most of the general commercial now being absorbed and built out over in Sierra College. It just, there isn't a big opportunity for a general commercial spot to happen there. So we were brainstorming and talking to Mary Beth and just trying to figure out what would be best. And I think this is probably the best option for all of us. And we're open to feedback and suggestions or anything that everybody has.
Thank you.
Mary Beth, can you again sum up what general commercial allows as far as residential on that site?
In the table provided in the packet, Christy, can you blow that up a little more?
Yes.
My print on
It's
my
pretty
page is
tiny.
very tiny. There we go. So you can see all the Ps are permitted uses, MUP is minor use permit, UP is use permit. So under the general commercial category, you have industry, manufacturing, recreation, education, public services, multifamily residential, business, financial services, and then just general services, transportation, infrastructure. So, you know, you could, just like downtown, you could take the existing home and turn it into a hair salon or something like that. Whereas in the RS10, it would just be residential development. You could do RCFEs, residential care facilities for the elderly, under the RS10 that you couldn't do under the general commercial. You could do mobile home parks under the residential, where you can't do that under the general commercial.
And what's the net acreage after the PG E easement came in?
The PG E easement is 0.754 acres, and the existing site, 6.3 acres in total. So it'd be just about, 5.5 acres remaining without the PG&E line in their easement area.
And R10 allows for what, up to 10 units per acre?
Scroll down, Christy.
I think
yes, we have there's a table that's comparing the lot size and setbacks and all that good stuff.
Oh, yeah. We didn't drill down on number
is that
of
our
units.
quarter-acre lots, 10,000 square feet, which would be like Sunrise Loomis?
Yeah. And which is immediately adjacent to this parcel.
That's what Legacy Lane is?
Yes, RS10. And Christy, can you look at the aerial photo?
Sure.
To show the adjacent RS10?
Okay, so here we are. And then this neighborhood here would be the existing RS10.
Sorry.
Mary Beth, when you talked to PG&E, or I don't know if you did or not, do we know if there's an additional setback that extends beyond the easement that would preclude certain uses such as residential or any kind of habitation?
I did reach out. I had an email conversation with a gentleman representative from PG&E, and their area is specifically their area. So no encroachment into their easement area, but everything outside of that is buildable and doable.
And that is also correct from what we were told when they approached us at the beginning to put this new relief valve type system in.
So
Well,
there's
that's
no
positive.
real effect on the residences around it, then it sounds like.
Not at all.
Be a great place for a park. I'd say that. I've heard from people in our neighborhood who express the same. We're in desperate need of parks in the town of Loomis.
We're also still looking for a couple acres of high density land. Don't forget.
Yep.
Maybe we could do both on this.
That's been identified on the affordable housing list.
There's high density across the street, right? I think there's like, or is that in Penryn? I'm not sure. I thought there was some like apartments over just to the north.
Yeah,
There's
the feathered
commercial
nest is
here.
across the street. And,
Mhm.
it's mostly commercial and probably RA across the street. There's Trims, is that Trims, like a junkyard across the street?
It's all general commercial and industrial beyond that, light industrial.
Now, how many more acres do we need for high density? Mark, was it 3?
2.2.
Oh, I'm sorry, what?
2.2
2.2?
at least.
But I think we added an acre, right? Because there was a property that changed from residential estates to residential agriculture, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, when we did the math, Beth, I think we only need to account for 4 more units. But
Okay.
I'll let Lucy figure that out. But that's what I recall.
That was my recollection too. Just add 4. It wasn't acreage. It's just 4 units someplace.
Okay, which we covered, I think, with that charter school then. That was way more than 4 units.
That makes sense.
So I have a question for you though, Brett, as an owner, and I know you have a house on that property.
Yes.
Would your family want to have high density around that house?
I would probably say no, and I might be speaking out of turn here, but I don't think the neighbors to Legacy Lane, correct me if I'm wrong on that naming of that whole development that we had sold off a while ago that they built. I don't think that they would vote that as their high priority first choice either.
Thank you.
Do you happen to recall, was so ways back, at least a decade, but there was some project proposed on your property, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but Legacy Lane was totally against it then. Do you remember what was being proposed at that time?
Well, yeah, so the 2 times that I know the property, so my mom still lives on the property. The 2 times that it had sold and was going to be developed was going to be high density residential in the back and commercial up front. And that has always been the dilemma, is that we're forcing the residential developers into building something and putting something up front that they have technically no idea what they're doing, because they're not commercial developers. They're just trying to meet a need for the zoning. And we're trying to figure out a way that, since this keeps selling, what is actually the best that supports where this property sits, especially with Legacy Lane next to us. If we can mirror it and just extend that, I think the town and the neighbors and the overall feel of that community is much better.
Anybody else Beth, what do you think?
I am curious about, so if people were not opposed to the high density in the back and commercial in the front, and presumably just because that's the way it was, the land use is already designated there. Like you said, can't we just flip it, have the high density along the Pg E corridor, and then a park to Tim's point, designated for the town. That does seem like a nice.
Well, the town's going to have to buy that from them at market rate.
And how big is the parcel?
Total 6.3 acres,
But then 5 with,
less the 0.754.
it's not that big.
I think
Less than
the
6, and
acres-
some water, it's not open space, but it's yeah, there's some drainage back there.
Yeah, it was an old pond back there, and then there's a new pond on their property too.
Yeah.
So this is the one that's right next to Del Oro, and then you cross the freeway, you've got the whole South Loomis Park. It's part of Placer County, so I mean, I don't know that I think a park in that location is a high priority. I think more in the center core.
It's the kind of thing, if we were doing it over, we might have asked the Lemus Ranch developer to give them a little park within the subdivision, but we didn't do that back then. That was Todd Lowell. I think it came out pretty well.
I
I
think
know
he
that
was
we're-
one of the. I think Todd was one. If I remember, at least I remember that first name from my mom. He might have been one of the people that were trying to buy it again here. I don't know if it was this last time or the one, Gene, if that was you recollecting back to that memory, the one that was a decade ago. But I remember that name involved in one of these last purchases.
Jean,
Well, I know whatever was proposed in the Legacy Lane, people came out en masse and were extremely upset at the higher density housing going in there.
Jean, do you remember, wasn't it Shadow Palms that passed before? It was a condominium kind of a park.
Shadow Palms was on the other side of Taylor Road, and it was probably either where Lugo's or Feathered Nest was going to
Feathered
be.
Nest is now.
Yeah, one or the other. It was a small apartment, like 12 or 14 units, maybe 2-story. It wasn't a big thing. I think now we would be careful about backing up residential kind of things to our light industrial, given the problems we've had in the past sometimes. But that's where it was. It was on the other side of Taylor.
And I misspoke. It's not the light industrial. That's just the regular industrial.
Regular industrial. Part of me says, hey, we need to be looking very carefully for our high density. On the other hand, I think we should keep in mind that people are going to want ordinary homes as well. And some of them may not want to be into whatever higher density Hidden Grove ends up being. And yes, these are going to be more expensive, but it doesn't mean when we talk about affordable, it doesn't mean unaffordable for everybody. It means unaffordable for the lower half, I guess, of people. But that means they're still affordable for a lot of people. Part of me says, we need to get our higher density places and not lose all the space. But on the other hand, I think we need to be aware to be providing a range of kinds of housing too. And we don't have a lot of space left for just this ordinary kind of 10,000 square foot lot subdivisions, or even if it were a little bit smaller than that.
I'm not opposed to 2 to 10 after hearing a lot of the comments tonight. My belief is the higher density should be closer to the core, the downtown area where people are walking, and you're not putting lot of traffic on the outer parts of the town. I think that, you know, as you plan communities, you want your density in the core, and then as you spread out, you want less density, and you know, preserving that as much as possible is, I think, has got to be a top priority when planning these kind of things out. And we've done a pretty good job in Loomis by doing that. You know, if you look at most of Loomis, you know, it's large acres on the outer rings of the town, and as you get, you know, closer to town, it's more medium and higher density. So, you know, looking at the existing land uses on land use at Legacy Lane, what I think that the property owner is proposing is not much different. Well, it's actually just the same as the adjacent property. So, you know, and I think there are some limitations to that property with the wetlands and the easement. You're not, Legacy Lane is a neighborhood of 52 or so single families, and that property, the subject property that we're discussing, is probably half the size of Legacy Lane. So, you know, fully built out, I don't envision, you know, more than 25 units going in to that area, maybe less with the wetlands. So you're not going to see a drastic change. I mean, if you're to ask the neighbors in Legacy Lane, I have a pulse on the neighborhood, of course. You know, they just assume not change it at all. But I don't think that that's an option on the table. And I think at some point, some of these infill lots are just going to be filled in. And so, you know, like I said, if I had my choice, you know, it would be a great place for a park, but I don't think that that's an option. And so I think we need to be pragmatic and look at what the worst case scenario would be and the best case scenario. So, you know, if 2 to 10 units or RS 2 to 10 is what you know, compromise of worst case and best case scenario would be, I think that's probably a decent compromise. I'm not going to be a cheerleader for it, but I think it's a middle ground.
Mark or Anders, could you remind me what is the density for general commercial?
I believe it, Christy, it's
2 to 10.
2 to 10. Yeah.
Units.
Okay.
So actually the existing land use designation allows what's being requested. And I know we heard last time from Brett's mother that they thought they had to have commercial on Taylor Road and residential at back. But let's be clear, the residential designation allows residential right up to Taylor Road. You do not have to have commercial. So with the existing land use designation, you can do what is being proposed, and you could expand that existing subdivision in there at that existing land use designation.
But we wouldn't probably want them to do less than 10, would we? Or no, we were looking at, if we're looking at, RS 10 is 10,000, that's 4 to the acre, isn't it?
Right.
Correct.
Quarter acre lots, like
Right.
Loomis.
And that can be done under the existing land use designation. You know, looking at it, my recommendation would leave the designation as is. It gives flexibility to the landowner. I think if the landowner needs to talk to the town about what can be done on there in their promotion of the property, if they're trying to sell it, that can be done. But, you know, somebody could come in and have some kind of a mixed use in there, not just residential. So there's some opportunities. And honestly, and this is just personal, I wouldn't want a house backing up to a gas relief valve. That I don't know, something I wouldn't want, and I would not buy in a location like that.
Well, that was one of our major concerns when they were putting it in, and we were looking for the least amount of exposure, right? So I also wouldn't want general commercial with a lot of traffic going in and out if I was a business owner with that there. If you're saying it that way, right? If we're going to get, I mean, how much risk are we going to willing to take then? Not well, if you talk to PG&E, there's zero risk. That's why they put it in. But if we're going to hypothetically throw out risk about living in a spot or having a lot of customer traffic, I would think the living in the spot would be our least risk as a town than having hundreds of people in the spot.
Mary Beth, are there things they can do with the RS10 that they can't do with the general commercial?
Yes. So Christy's scrolling through the list, and so the GC is on the left, the RS10 is on the right. So it could be a golf course, country club, the park playground's kind of a no-brainer. Residential recreation facility, carriage houses, mobile home parks, multifamily housing, residential accessory uses, residential
Kind of
care
multifamily
facilities.
is that?
Multifamily what?
What type of multifamily?
It
That's
says
pretty-
two
I think we're looking at
units.
duplex.
What duplexes? Is
Correct.
that what we're talking about? Okay.
Yes.
And Mary Beth, correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't we figure out that they could actually put in for a general commercial permit on the RS10 if the commercial was something that somebody truly wanted to develop on that property in conjunction with residents?
Yeah, under the existing zoning, you can do residential in a mixed-use project under the current commercial designation.
Right. And if it was the RS10,
I'll scroll down and you can see the different
Oh, yeah, thank you.
allowances for that. So as you can see, there's no retail. So for services, you're looking at adult daycare, child daycare, public buildings, and that's pretty much it.
I'm sorry. I'm on a Zoom call, buddy.
Oh, okay.
Bye.
So it allows for a wider variety of residential, but not a whole lot in terms of commercial.
Got it.
So I have a question for you, Brett. In your talks to the staff and with your family, if it were just to stay as it is, what is your feelings on that?
I honestly, I don't know. I don't think we've made progress into making this property something that people, and I'm just going from historical, not, I can't see the future, but everybody that's bought the property, so the two people prior have wanted to build residential. And it seems like this is surrounded by residential on two of the sides, the back and the right side, facing out towards Taylor Road. It just seems to be what is going to be developed. With Sierra College being the main general commercial area, I just don't see people coming in to develop this piece of property for general commercial purposes. And I could be totally wrong. It could come in tomorrow, right? And I'm looking at this going, okay, we were wrong, but that's not what it's indicated. This thing was built this way 20 years ago before Sierra College blew up. And I'm just looking for an opportunity for, again, both sides. So whatever we decide is not going to hurt anybody's feelings. I'm just looking for opportunities. And it just seems like the writing's on the wall that this should probably be a commercial property. Excuse me, a residential property.
But you do know that with its current land use designation, you can do that.
Right. Just not as many opportunities, right? For the residential development, the elderly care facilities, the mobile home parks, whatever somebody wanted to put in there, it just limits us to whatever a developer wants to develop can develop. And we're trying to maximize those opportunities, not minimize them just by a zoning. Unless the town feels that that is our best and the town's best opportunity to get that piece of property developed is to keep it general commercial. I mean, that's the town's view. Then, hey, yeah, we are be in alignment with that. We don't want to fight something just because you have a bigger view than we do for whatever reasons. Then let's keep it that way. We just think it's the opposite side. And that's what we're working with Mary Beth, trying to get this point across, is that I think it's a good opportunity. And yeah, I don't know for sure, but we think that is our best opportunity.
I would go back to Jean's point that, it is true that we do need more diverse housing stock. I mean, we need housing at all levels. We need high density, we need market rate, we even need, I think, luxury too. I mean, we needed housing at all levels. And so I'm personally comfortable turning this to residential because it is true there are more residential uses that they would be able to do. Although, Anders, so your recommendation though was to keep it as is because you're concerned about the PG&E?
No, my recommendation is to keep it as is because it provides more opportunities on that site, including the residential opportunities.
But there are residential opportunities that are excluded as well. It looked like that whole section with residential care facilities and some things over there that are not allowed in the commercial, and that might be important too.
That might be again.
I mean, we need those kinds of things as well, maybe more than we need the potential commercial.
Mm-hmm.
That's the choice this committee's having to make right now.
I think I can see moving this to match the zoning to the adjacent residential there, the Legacy Lane. And sounds like the owners sort of prefer that. And to Jean's point, it does allow them more opportunities on the residential side. Ramona has her hand up.
Yes, I have a question. It sounds like in the past, it was under the impression that there was intended to be commercial front-facing Taylor and then residential in the back, and that you either had residential purchasers of the property interested in it, not really wanting to delve into the commercial aspect of it, and probably vice versa. If you're a commercial developer, you're throwing up your hands about, well, what do I do about residential? I get that because they're totally, they're different markets and different developers in those markets. If that was all completely general commercial, has there been any interest in that aspect of everything being commercial and not trying to get both in one parcel, residential and commercial? Because I just understand that, in the Swetzer Road area, that there's commercial-based things, more or less, that aren't necessarily industrial or light industrial that could occupy general commercial space and then, free up that industrial space for more industrial type activities. Because, in general, we don't have a huge amount of commercial space left to develop in town, really. I would prefer to keep the commercial more in the main part of town. But, things like, or even the Feathered Nest, which I know is kind of things like that. Is there any interest, or have you noticed any interest as a property owner of people wanting to do a particular site-specific business operation that would occupy the whole site versus like a strip mall kind of, shopette center?
So this is just going back from what I know, and it's only been 2 of the last purchases, and Jean might know a little bit more because she's probably got a better history of it than I do. But I know from the property that I know of, talking to my mom and just dealing with it, is that the last two people that have bought it have been residential developers looking to develop it residentially in the back. And then I don't know if they got misguided or they just thought they had to have commercial on it, but I think there must be a minimum amount of commercial that must go on that property. And they were then trying to find the best place for it and figured it was Taylor Road. So they were just like trying to scramble to get this thing put together instead of building it out the way they wanted to.
The last proposal, I vaguely recall, wanted variances. They were requesting general plan amendments, and that just is never a slam dunk in Loomis, to say it frankly. And so I think that was, under the existing land use designations, they just couldn't do what they wanted to. So they've all asked for general plan amendments, and that just, again, that's not happening usually.
Yeah.
So I have a question of staff. So if this does revert to R1 through 10 or 2 to 10, would that remove the possibility of high density to be placed there, the high density overlay potentially?
Yes.
Yeah, there's not, it's not dense enough for high density. And then the types of residential that are allowed, right, I have them on the screen. So, it's duplexes, residential care facility for the elderly, single family dwellings, mobile home parks. But it's not that high, super high density that the town needs for those 2.2 acres.
Okay, so in either land use designation, high density is not. We couldn't put an overlay there. Is that true?
You have the high density. Well, you have the multifamily for your general commercial,
Yeah.
So that's going to get a higher density than the medium density residential, which would be that RS10.
Okay, got it. I think you've answered my question. So what would the highest possible density be under its existing designation be? Per acre.
I believe it's 20 units per acre. Is that correct, Christy? Mary Beth?
Is it at the bottom?
Oh, there we are. Sorry, look away. So we're looking at 2 to 10 units.
Okay.
An acre.
Under its current use.
Mm-hmm. Versus 4 at RS10.
Got it. Okay.
And the high density they want from us is 20?
Yeah, for HCD, for that purpose, the minimum would be the 20.
And they don't care about anything in between, I guess, then.
It's not.
No. You beat me to the mute switch. Thanks, Christy. But no, unfortunately, Gene, in order to hit that criteria, it has to be 20.
So I guess Mark and Lucy, if they put a mobile home park in here, would that be considered affordable under HCD?
Depends on the density.
Well, not on the density. Well,
it depends on the density, and it depends on if it's actually, they're requiring monitoring to make sure it's actually affordable. And you can do an assumption based on a percentage they have. I won't get into it, but if it's actually built out, you need to monitor it for actual affordability.
Okay.
I nominate Christy to do the monitoring because I don't think Mary Beth wants to.
All right, do we have public comment? No public comment.
I think Tim made a good comment about the traffic. I hadn't really thought about that, about locating the higher density down further where people can walk and get around more. But then got me thinking about the traffic, and we don't really need a lot of high density traffic coming out of this area down past Del Oro and King Road school intersection, because those things are clogged up enough already. So I guess for a lot of reasons, I'm leaning toward their request to change it.
Is that a motion, Jean?
Okay, I'll make the motion. If nobody seconds it, we'll know that it's going away.
I second it.
Can we have roll call, please?
Yeah, let me find my list here. Okay, so Jean made the motion, Bonnie made the second.
Yes.
Okay, Jean Wilson,
Yes.
Bonnie London,
Yes.
Jan Clark Kretz,
Yes.
Tim Underko,
No.
Beth Cohen,
No.
is that 3 out of 5?
Right.
That's a majority.
This was to change it to RM, right? The motion was to change it to RM
To RS10, correct?
or
Well,
RS10.
RM, because RS10 is a zone versus RM is your designation.
So we're designating it to RM.
Correct.
But that was voted down.
What?
No.
Oh, I heard 3-2.
Oh, I thought there were 3 no's.
3
No,
yes
there were 3 yeses.
and 2 no's.
Okay.
So we're changing it from general commercial to RM.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
And we're just recommending the change.
We're recommending the change for the council, for the commission and council to consider at their time.
Correct.
All right, Brett.
And just so I understand, what is the difference between, and maybe nothing, RM and RS10?
So RM is your land use designation and RS10 is the zone.
Got
So
it.
we're talking general plan update. So it would be the designation versus the zone.
Oh, okay.
And
So
what,
it's called
what-
RM in the general plan, but the same thing is called RS10 on the zoning chart.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Thank you for that point of
just
clarification.
so you know, if the council approves this land use designation change, then the town has to update the zoning map to reflect that to be consistent. So that's the second step in this process.
Got it. Okay.
You clear, Brett?
Yes, I am now.
Well, Mary Beth or any of our staff will be happy to answer any of your questions. And as always,
Well, I appreciate it. And I hope this was a collaborative effort. It seemed to be. And again, we weren't in this for ourselves. We wanted this to be a win-win for everybody involved and have opportunities for the town and us as a family. So hopefully everybody feels that way with these results.
yes.
We appreciate the effort that you and your brother and your mother have made. Thank you.
Yeah. And we're all neighbors, we all live in this town. And so we understand and appreciate your family's input on this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And if you guys need anything, please don't hesitate to reach out. Mary Beth, especially you have all my contact.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thanks for being here too.
All
So
right,
it'll-
everybody have a
so-
great night. Oh,
So
sorry.
Brett, so I just want to let you know, this is, it's not completely done yet. It's going to roll up
Right.
now to the planning commission.
Right.
Okay. Thank
And
you,
I'll
Brett.
just get updates from there. Or how does that work?
You may have to come, if I would suggest that you come once you kind of
Okay.
get an idea when it's going to be on the planning commission. It's best to have the owners present.
Oh,
Mary
okay.
Beth, she'll let you know.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I really appreciate everybody. Have a great night. And yeah, take care of yourselves and be safe.
Thank you. All right, Christy, is that the last of them?
That is
of
the
land-
last of the land use change requests. So that just leaves finding that RH site.
Okay, so it sounds like we will need to have one more meeting, correct, Mary Beth?
Correct.
So we have to talk about where potential areas for the high density will go. We have the table that we still need to go through, and we're going to go back through some of the definitions that need to be completely clarified, is how I remember it. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
So just for my clarification, we have 3 years to find that additional 2.2 acres of high density, right? If the churches, one of the churches that is interested, if they were to come forward with the project before then, would we then not need to do that?
Bonnie, it's really not known. It's possible that when we get to the end of this land use designation process, we're going to have to count up how many units, net do we need, or do we have too many? And if a project goes in, then we really take it year by year on what that no net loss in the town of Loomis is for housing. So it's just going to have to be continually tracked.
But we're expecting or hoping to get the general plan done before the 3 years are up, correct? So one of my concerns is if we go ahead and start designating things now, and then some other things come through, like with some of the churches or something else, then as it's my understanding, if we can't really downzone anything without upzoning someplace else to make up for it. So is it really a good idea for us to go ahead and do that now?
What we're asking you to do is not to designate any of these lands today or with this general plan amendment. We're asking what lands do you want to consider in the future when you need to go out and make that designation? Where does the city council planning commission go first to take a look at what's best at that moment in time? Because it's too speculative now to say this is where we want the high density. So the intent is, go ahead, Andreas.
At the end of this process, we may also need to look for some additional units based on changes we're making now.
Correct.
Like the change that was just recommended took us from a max of 10 per acre down to, I believe, was it 4 per acre?
Yes.
So we'll have to find all those extra units that were lost by that recommendation under the no net loss principle.
Oh, we didn't think about that, did we?
If I remember, didn't we talk about that at the last meeting, that it wasn't that many houses?
Correct.
How many, Christy, was it?
Oh, I don't remember the exact number. We'd have to do a comparison with that and any of the other changes that we've made and list that out. But I mean, it could be double. I mean, if you think about it, 4 to 10, that's 6 units per acre. So if we're looking at 5 acres, perhaps, that's a difference there.
With SB 9, doesn't that increase that or no?
You're not guaranteeing it.
Right. It does potentially, but Lucy will tell you that you have to jump through a bunch of hoops and that HCD doesn't recognize SB 9 as meeting your criteria.
Right.
And if you want to find the irony and the sadness of that, I will join you. There are also other pieces of legislation. SB 899 got a fair distance but didn't get approved. That's the one that would have basically made housing on church sites permitted use throughout the land. You would have no discretion for affordable housing. That didn't get signed, but it hasn't gone away. There's another piece of legislation that we're being told by the lobbyist will be signed, and that would make all commercial have residential as a permitted use. And that's a real head scratcher to me because I don't know how you do that, but I don't think the legislature's in the common sense business much. So we'll have to see what comes out of that. So that kind of gets to your point, Bonnie, that there may be some new legislation come down the pike that might solve some of this.
All right, Mary Beth, when do we meet again?
Our next meeting is scheduled 2 weeks, Thursday, March 3rd, 6 o'clock. To everybody, committee members, if you're not able to be here, please let me know as soon as possible so I can confirm a quorum. And if you can be here, you don't need to contact me.
Mary Beth, is it at all possible, I mean, at the will of the committee, to move that meeting to Tuesday? He said, hopefully. I'll be on a plane and just landing about the time the committee gets started.
Committee members present, that would put it at March 1st on Tuesday? At
More
what-
doable for me. I cannot make March 3rd. I'll be out of town.
March 1st works for me. And
Bonnie, Jan. Beth?
I can make myself available.
Okay.
I'm not available on the 1st.
Anders is not.
No. But if Mark is there and Christy's there, they can handle it.
It might potentially be our last one, though.
Yeah.
Open on Monday too.
Yeah, Monday's open. And Wednesday. Oh, Ash
Monday.
Wednesday. No, we won't do that.
Yeah, Ash Wednesday would be a bad idea.
Well, I have 4 confirmed committee members for Tuesday, March 1st. So we
Jean
can
can do
make
it
that
too.
happen.
Jean can make it too.
Oh, good. Thank you, Jean.
What about February 28th? That's Monday night.
I can do that.
I'm sorry I'm booked that night, but
Anders?
I'm fine on the 28th.
And what about you, Beth?
I can make it work.
Okay. Jean?
Yeah, I could do it.
Okay. Andreas? Christy?
Yep.
You guys all good?
I'm fine either
Wednesday?
with the 28th or the 1st.
Okay. Sounds like maybe Monday might be a better, Mary Beth. Does that sound okay?
And Tim, you said you weren't available on the Monday night?
that's correct. Sorry.
Okay.
Oh,
That's okay.
okay.
So I have Beth, Jean, Jan, and Bonnie for Monday, the 28th. Okay, we'll go ahead and continue
So
this.
we're basically swapping Tim for,
What's that, Jean?
I'm trying to figure out who we're losing. We're losing Tim and gaining
Anders.
Anders.
It's an upgrade, sounds like.
Hardly.
No.
Hardly.
Hardly.
No.
Ouch.
Swapping. It's kind of a funny word. No.
So for the 28th, I have 4 confirmed committee members, whereas on March 1st, I would have 5. So either way you want to go.
Maybe we could send an email out to the other committee members that are not here, just
Yeah.
especially Randy, and see what his availability is. And then we'll either choose that Monday or the Wednesday. right?
Wait, I thought March,
Monday,
Or Tuesday.
the 28th or the
Tuesday,
1st.
The 1st, yeah. I will confirm that in the morning and send out to everybody so that you have that confirmation also.
so the person that can't come on the 1st is Anders?
Correct.
Any other questions, committee members? And if there isn't any, then we're going to go ahead and adjourn at 8:08. Thank you, everybody.
Good night,
Good
everyone.
night.
Good night.
Everybody.
Thank you. Good night.